Now let's start with the concept of private constructor. First, we'll discuss about what will happen if we try to convert our existing application into the code for the private constructor. So let's move toward our application. In this current application, what we have done is we have created an employee class with the employee ID and employee name as the member variable. Then there is an employee constructor. There is a default constructor without any parameter. We have printed some message inside default constructor. We have initialized the value for employee ID and employee name. And here there is a print employee method which prints the employee ID and print the employee name. Now within main, I have created the object of employee class, that is EMP, and emp.print employee is printing the employee details, that is the employee ID and employee name, and it would be printed as 0 and A, because whenever you will call this particular whenever you try to create the object of that class, constructor will get called and it will have the default value set up to 0 and A. Now let's run it and see the output of it. It should print the ID as 0 and the value as A. Let's run, and we should see the output as inside default constructor printed as it is, and the value of employee ID, that is 0 and A, printed onto the screen. But what will happen if we convert this particular constructor into private? As soon as we write the private keyword here, you can see that some red underline appears here inside the main, and when you try to run the application, it will show you certain errors. Okay, so this is the error: employee is inaccessible due to its protection level. Let me copy it and paste it here. So the error is employee.employee is inaccessible due to its protection level. What this particular line means: we already know that whenever we try to create the object of the class, the constructor gets called. And what is happening in this line is, I am creating the object and it is trying to call the constructor. But the constructor is now declared with the private keyword. So it becomes a private constructor now. It is not default constructor, but it is now a private constructor. So since this is having the access level private, the constructor cannot get called during the invocation of the object, and that is why it is showing an error. What does that ultimately mean? It means that if you have the constructor private, you cannot create the instance object of that class. So means I cannot create the object of that class. If I'm not able to create the object of that class, I'm not able to access the members inside the class, then ultimately this class becomes unused for me. Then why the private keyword or private constructor is there? What is the purpose of the private constructor? Private constructor is used for some specific reasons, some specific purposes. Let's try to understand it in more depth in our upcoming sessions. Thank you.